Okay, so welcome back. Now, that was Aisha Ibrahim with, again, the politicians. And anyway, let me not say much. Now, yesterday we started a discussion. We were speaking about the ECG and the move by government to get some changes made in the... we had a very fruitful discussion. I was enlightened on a number of things. I hope you were also. But today we are going to do a continuation of that particular one. And we have in the studio once more Mike Ewa, who is a member of the private sector participation, the ECG private sector participation stakeholder consultation team. He's joined us to continue the discussion where we left off from yesterday. Mike, thank you so much for joining us once more.
Good morning. How are you?
Okay, very well, thank you.
And thanks for having me.
Sure. So let's do a quick recap of what we did yesterday. We touched on quite a number of things. Can you quickly, let's just sum it up. We arrived at this point that as things stand now, whether we like it or not, there's a problem at ECG. Government is working towards alleviating that challenge, getting it out. So the options, again, you mentioned were two available to us, the concession option and the partial privatization. Maybe you could just run us through quickly before we move to other things.
Before I even address that, let's get this clear. If we say there is a problem at ECG, we are not being fair to ECG.
Problem with the power sector in the country.
There's a problem with the power sector. We have problems with generation, problems with transmission, and problems with distribution.
Okay.
All right. Now, we all agree that it must be solved, because anytime they put off electricity in your home, you are not happy. And I'm also not happy. And that other Ghanaian is not happy. So we seek a solution. Now, every time we have a government, and it is the responsibility of the government to lead in solving that problem. There are many approaches to solving a problem like this, or there could be many approaches to solving the problem. But each time you want to choose a path which is fairly simple, fairly easy, and feasible to do. And the government has thought through the process, through a process of engaging consultants to study the process and to make recommendations. All right. And they have studied the process, and they have come to the conclusion that if we fix the problem beginning with distribution, it frees up the system for investment. So the focus is on ECG, but that does not mean that government is not doing anything about transmission and government is not doing anything about generation. At the moment, the doomsday problem is because there is not enough power generated to be sold. But if we can encourage people to sell more power, then of course we must assure them that the power will be bought when it is produced. And that is why the government's strategy focuses on ECG in particular. Now, to solve the problem with ECG, government has decided that it wants to use private sector participation, simply because government does not have all the money it takes to solve the problem at the end of ECG. And again, to do that, the government has gone through a process of studying the problem. And the government has got consultants to make recommendations to it. Initially, the consultants came with a large number of recommendations, but the government said, no, this way we can't make a decision easily. So study it further and bring it down, being mindful of the principles under which we are working and the objectives we have set ourselves. And the consultants have come up with two options. A concession option and a partial privatization option. And the difference is that in the case of the concession option, all the assets of ECG and ECG itself will continue to be government property. But the operations and maintenance and development of the network will be given to the private sector to do for a period of time, after which they hand it back to government. So under the concession model, the government holds all the assets of ECG 100% in perpetuity. But under the partial privatization model, a private sector entity will be a part owner of ECG. All right. And because the private sector entity is a part owner of ECG and ECG owns the assets, naturally, or by extension, that private party will be a part owner of the assets of ECG. And that ownership may also be in perpetuity, which means we will not own the assets 100%. This This is the basic difference between the two options.
I see. Wow. So that was just a brief I wanted you to, the preamble I wanted you to set before moving into the discussion. So now, as things stand, obviously you are in talks with the ECG with regards to this particular thing. How are they faring? How have they fared in your interactions with them? Are they okay with this option? I mean, any of these options, I must say.
Sure. We have been engaging with ECG quite a bit on this. I shouldn't say quite a bit, quite a lot on this. And we have perceptions of their attitudes, etc. But by and large, the leadership of ECG is very comfortable with government seeking the private sector to come and partner it to solve the problems there. Okay. All right. So they agree. They are not averse to it at all. However, they may have preferences on how some of these things should be done. I'm even aware that the management and board of ECG has prepared a document which they have either set before government or they will set before government shortly. And basically in that they are proposing that the suggestions in the recommendations of the consultant could be modified in a way that they could take and run with. And that if you are given the challenge, they could do it probably as a private sector. And individually, I welcome this 100%.
I see.
The only thing is that the process must be a transparent, fair, open, competitive process. So I would look at the suggestion from the ECG leadership as one of the many possible proposals we would have to review and at the end of the day make a decision on when government has decided clearly the direction it wants to go. Again, let's look at ECG. One of the things we Ghanaians must not lose sight of, and something we must be proud of, that if you look around Africa, ECG is one of the best power utilities.
All across Africa?
All across Africa. Just look at some of their achievements. From 1991, access to power in the country was only 50%. By the end of 2013, they had increased it to 76%. So the point is, if enough power was generated, they could supply power regularly and reliably to 76% of our population. They have only 24% more to cover. Again, when you go to ECG, we have some of the best engineers you can find anywhere in the world there. And we have some of the best leaders you can find anywhere in the world in ECG. They have good management, good engineers, but they are constrained. And the constraints are problems probably we have all together created for them. We know that operationally and technically, the company is not doing well. Let me give you an example. If you look around the world, for the average electricity consumer, there are about just 10 interruptions per annum. 365 days and only 10 interruptions, whether it is doomsday or it is the voltage which is too high or too low or whatever. When you come to Ghana, in 2012, do you know the number of interruptions the average consumer experienced? 106.
106
interruptions against the global benchmark of 10.
10.
That is one. Okay. In 2013, it was about the same number. In 2014, your guess will be as good as mine. It was worse, and of course, you know the reasons. Secondly, ECG is unable to account for, and what I mean by that is they are unable to get money from all the power they sell. If you give ECG 100 units of power to sell, they're able to account for only 65 units. So there is 35 units that we cannot account for, either because people are not paying for the electricity, or people are stealing the electricity, or there are technical problems causing that to happen. Now, if we were able to recover even half of that, of the 35%, let's say, so that would be about 17.5%, if we were able to recover that, it will bring in an additional amount of almost $200 million per annum. And that's about the amount of money we need every year to invest in ECG, to turn it around and to supply good quality power to the rest of the country sustainably.
I see.
Thirdly, because they lose 35%, they are unable to generate enough money for the investments they need to do. But we must do the investments. So you see, if we leave ECG the way it is now, with these problems, we will be going nowhere. But if we could do something about these things I've talked about and change the situation, then they can do the investments they must do. They could supply power to the people who must get power at the level of quality we all desire, sustainably. All right, and that is why government is working on solving the problem.
I see. So now, this is an initiative by government.
Yes.
It's not being forced down our throats like some are suggesting.
Right.
Because I've had interactions with people who have suggested that per the Compact 2, we've been given some money to invest in the power sector and we are being forced to, quote, privatize ECG. Is that the case?
Well, I can sympathize with sentiments like that. Normally, when you don't have enough information, what happens is you go off on a tangent of your own. But in 1956, a guy called Quist wrote a book, and I'm not sure whether we are looking at what he said, and our attitudes have not changed. He said, if you want to hide anything from let's say the Ghanaian or the African, put it in a book, and you would never see it. And that is what happens. The Compact 2 document is on the internet. If you go to the MCC site, if you go to the MEDA site, you could see it, and you could see the beginnings of the makings of Compact 2 also there. Nothing is hidden. No one is forcing anything down the throats of Ghana. I am sure you've heard about Compact 1.
Indeed.
It did quite a number of projects, and it was focused on the agri sector.
Yeah.
One of the monumental things it left in our country is the M1N1 highway. Yeah. Everybody sees it. Now, Ghana managed the project so very well. And again, remember, that was a grant from the United States government, and it is something we applied for. We went on our own volition and said, okay, if you've got this to give to the world, we think we qualify, and this is what we're going to use it for. And we got Compact 1 and managed it very well. After Compact 1, all the problems of Ghana had not been solved. And if this was an avenue that government could get some money to fix some of our problems, then it could still be an avenue for us to do other things. After Compact 1, there was a study in this country. And basically the study was simple. What are the things that get in the way of people who want to do business in this country? What are the things that limit them, as it were? What are the constraints? So they studied industry, they studied institutions, they studied individuals, basically through surveys. It turned out that the number one binding constraint on economic growth in this country is power, unavailability, poor quality, etc. So naturally, it was just the right thing for government to do, to remove that binding constraint so that we can be free to do economic activities that will bring us benefit. All right. So again, government made a proposal to MCC. The Americans did not come imposing anything on us. Government said, to be able to grow our economy, we need to fix the problems in the power sector. And this is how we want to do it. So then it became a process of negotiations between the government of Ghana and the government of the United States through MCC. And ultimately we did Compact 2. So whatever is in Compact 2 is not something that anybody is imposing on Ghana. It is something that we went out there to seek to come and remove the number one binding constraint on our economic growth so that we can grow economically. In any case, if you fix the problems associated with the power sector, we will be able to gain within 2 to 5% of GDP growth every year on top of whatever we've been declaring. So it's a good program, well-intentioned. Government went to the United States and negotiated with MCC. The Americans did not come imposing anything on us. And under that program, there are a number of projects. The ECG turnaround project is just one of them. But interestingly, all of Compact 2 is focused on the power sector, so we call it the Power Compact. every project there is in the power sector. Trust me, if we fix the power sector problems, we will be freed to expand economically.
So you're okay. I can see. Okay, that's a document you are working with.
Yeah, this is a presentation I've been doing around.
Okay, so you spoke of the ECG turnaround project. What is that? What was entailed in that particular one? And are we changing ECG in a particular? I mean,
that's what we've been talking about since yesterday. The private sector participation in there. What we are saying is that operationally they could do better. Technically, they could do better. Financially, they could do better. What must we do to make that happen? That is the project we are talking about.
Oh, okay. So basically, it just sums up everything about the PSP, the public sector,
private sector participation
in the ECG.
Yes.
Anyway, very interesting there. But today, we'll be inviting our viewers to join us on the phone lines. Yesterday, we weren't able to do that. Today, we'll be inviting you to join us. What you make of this move by government to involve the private sector in the management of ECG?
Let me state it better. It's not a move to involve the private sector. A move to deepen the involvement of the private sector.
Okay, so the private sector has always been
there, selling electricity, putting new meters there, connecting lines to our homes, etc. The private sector has always been involved. Yes.
Okay, so you speak of we needing huge sums of money to be invested into this particular one. Now, the private sector, we are not seeing so much investment from them. Is there a way, is there a model that will be able to actually get more private persons on board to actually also invest some huge sums of money? I'm sure you wouldn't need anything less than $100 million to be a part of this. Or
that is right, but that is for the person renewing the infrastructure, let's say the power lines, the transmission stations, etc., the distribution points, etc. But there are many ways in which the private sector of Ghana could be involved. First of all, those connecting the lines, those changing the meters, those retailing the credit, etc., they would still be there. All right, that is one end of it. Secondly, Ghanaian companies could also come together and probably team up with foreign concerns, other people who have the money, to partake in the process. Listen, the private sector participation we seek here is not something that is a done deal that it must be given to foreigners. I believe strongly that Ghanaians can come together, set up an organization, and compete. However, one of the principles underlying this is that we are not going to experiment. We are going to solve a problem. So one objective is to make sure that the private sector entity that comes to participate in the running of ECG has the capacity, the experience, the financial wherewithal to do it. And one criterion we would always be looking at is that it must be an entity that has done a similar job and has been successful somewhere in this world.
Do we have such companies in Ghana currently?
We don't have such companies in Ghana. You have a good question. But the point I'm making is Ghanaians can team up with concerns like that and come and do it. So no Ghanaian is precluded. And you don't have to have money. You have to have the ideas. You have to demonstrate that your ideas would work when you bring in all of these factors. And you could be the person that would partner ECG.
I see.
It could even be the present management. Yes.
Okay, so please do watch out for me. I'm en route into changing things about the ECG. I think we can invite our viewers now to join us. 0302 211 691. I beg your pardon. 0302 211 691 or 0302 211 692. You call us and you join us and let us know what you make of this decision. Okay, I'm told there's a caller already online. You're calling us from Dakuman. Hello? Hello? Okay, I think we lost him. We lost him there, but you could also still join us 0302 211 691 0302 211 692. You could also share your concerns. If you have any additional questions you want to pose to Mike Ewa, he's with us currently in the studio, helping us understand what is actually happening. point is we are not being forced to accept anything. That's the clarification is given us. Okay, again, we are told... Okay. Okay, Bismarck is on the line now. Bismarck.
Hello, sir.
Bismarck, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Okay, thanks for joining us. Your thoughts?
Well, sir, I've listened to this program from yesterday. They actually mentioned and then from the comments and from the discussion so far, for me personally, I'm happy with this. Because this has been what the government should have done for several years. Looking at the program that we have in Ghana, the power generation that happens is a peculiar program that happens everywhere across Ghana. So if the government is starting from this perspective, for me, I understand and I'm happy with it. So that's what should have happened several years before today. And even from several years, several years before today. But my worry is Ghanaians who are operating the ECG and then the other companies. These are talking about the private sector too. Is these same Ghanaians who are coming to deal with this? So what is happening here? Is it because if you are working for the government, you just different perspective?
Oh.
Hello?
Yeah, we are listening. We are listening.
Is it because you are working for the government, you have different mentality? While you are working for the private sector, you also have different mentality because from what my thing was saying, the Ghanaians who are coming to affect, those who are operating from previous years were still Ghanaians.
It's not just Ghanaians. Anyone who has the capacity to assist, not just Ghanaians. If it's a Ghanaian, no problem. If it's a foreigner,
he's talking about the workers who
I'm not saying that Ghanaians are coming to it now. Only what I'm saying is most of the Ghanaians were really previous years.
Okay, yeah, indeed.
Right. But if you are talking about the PSP that is talking about, it means most of the Ghanaians are they are still coming to affect. Right.
Okay.
So my problem here is that when we were doing it previously, or in previous years, what was mentioned that those Ghanaians who are taking part in those activities were not doing it well.
Okay.
And now we are including more Ghanaians to adapt and then to boost the power generation of activities well.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. Point well noted. Mohammed, you are our next caller. You're online now. Mohammed, good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, Mohammed, your thoughts also.
Yeah, my problem is that they said they are calling America to come and fix our energy problem for us. Isn't it?
No, we are not inviting the Americans to fix anything for us. What we're actually doing is...
the officer said they are bringing America.
No.
If you calling the Ghanaian corporate, those involved can involve to solve the problem.
I see. Okay. Anyway, I think you weren't following us throughout, but we are, well, from what I've been talking to Mike Ewa about all this while, he hasn't at any point in time mentioned that the Americans are actually going to be joining us. But at least we've taken some comments from the public. Maybe you'll respond to them, then we can quickly wrap up on that.
I will address Bismarck's concern first. Basically, Bismarck said that he thinks it's the same Ghanaians who will be working there, whether it's under private sector control or public sector control. And that, what is the difference? Bismarck, let's look at it this way. Your brother works with the government, or your sister works with the government somewhere in this country. They don't go to work early sometimes. They do all manner of things that bring down the productivity of the company. Yet they retain their jobs and they continue to be paid. That's one of the biggest problems we face in this country. It is about our attitudes to work.
Yeah.
All right, I'm an Akan, and the Akan people say that I buy not only of us here. Now, because of the matrilineal inheritance system, we don't joke with our uncles. My nephews and nieces don't joke with me at all.
True. Because
traditionally, I'm the person they would inherit. All right, so if I have anything, they manage it well for me. But Ghanaians, generally, we say government, to be literal, has no such nephew or niece. And therefore, things that belong to government, our attitude to them is like a bicycle. But it should not be so, and it ought not to be so. The only difference that will happen here is The private sector entity will bring in its money to invest. If it does not manage the system that ensues well and the operations well, it will lose money. It will not only lose money, but it will also be penalized under the contract, which means it will lose even more. So under private sector management, they make sure that people do the work for which they have been employed. That is the only difference. If attitudes could change in ECG today, I can guarantee that from tomorrow, ECG will be viable.
As things stand now, it's not viable.
As things stand now, it's not viable. I've told you the numbers. It's not viable. But if attitudes could change today, from tomorrow it will be viable. And that is the fundamental problem we are dealing with. Okay. Whether in the power sector, in the agri sector, in whatever sector. That is the fundamental problem. So Bismarck's observation is right. If we could change attitudes, we could change things. But most of the time, if you want to change a system, it is difficult to change it internally. An external force always does that. All right? So when we talk about private sector participation, we are not saying Americans or British or anybody. We are saying the private sector from the world. Whoever can demonstrate that they can do it, whether they are Ghanaian or foreigners or a mix of Ghanaians and foreigners. But the asset will remain Ghana's property. Okay.
So finally, just before we go, what would you say to the average Ghanaian walking on the streets who just wants power? I just need to have light. I don't want to sleep in darkness. I don't want mosquitoes to have a meal out of me. What would you say to the ordinary Ghanaian out there now?
We have a simple thing. We all agree that there is doom cell. Yesterday, there was no light in my house in the night. And I had to mark some scripts. I couldn't do it because there was no electricity. Unfortunately, my generator also wouldn't work. We agree we have a problem. And we also agree that the problem must be solved. How to solve it is what the juncture we have come to now. The government has presented before us two options, a concession model and a partial privatization model. In either case, government will be an owner of probably all or part of the assets of the company. But the management of the company, the financing of the company, etc., will go into the hands of the private sector for a very long time so that they help us fix the problems. That will involve a lot of money, about $10.8 billion over the next 20 billion cedis over the next 25 years. Government doesn't have the money. We all see it. And government says it does not have the money. We should believe that. It is true. But there are people in the world who have the money, and provided we do it right, they would come and do it. And the problem with the power sector is with generation, transmission, and distribution. The strategy government is adopting to do it is to fix distribution so that people will be motivated to come into generation. We have two options. Government must make a decision probably within a month or two.
So there's still no timeline, or we are hoping by the next month, for instance, government would have made a decision?
Pretty shortly, government will make the decision.
How shortly are we looking at?
Let's say a month or two.
A month or two?
Yes.
So latest by March, you will know whether or not?
Yes, latest by March. And we are calling on Ghanaians to make inputs. If you think this is the option we should take, yes, fine. If you think it's the other option, fine. If you go to the media website, you will find the options there. You will find the advantages and disadvantages, descriptions, etc.
Maybe you can put out the media website so anyone who wants to visit can actually visit in there.
I think it's www.media.gov.gh or something like that. But if you Google it, you will get it.
Media.
Yes. Media, just Media Ghana, M-I-D-A.
Sure.
You will get it. And every bit of information is there. You see, the painful thing is that people don't go to get information and they say all manner of things. Indeed. But if you go there, you see what is there. You would understand it and you could help government make that decision. It is important. This decision is going to affect us for decades.
Decades.
We are calling on all Ghanaians to help us make that decision.
Mike Ewa, he's a member of the ECG private sector participation team that's currently working on getting the best for us in the power sector. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now,